Have heard of Brian Gerrish? No more needs to be said. Brian Gerrish.
My goodness.
Before we start, could I just say that there is actually a government online petition requesting the Treasury to issue these greenback pounds.
Right.
So if anybody would like to go on there and add to that petition.
Yeah, turn it down actually.
It's just the basic government online petition.
Okay, brilliant. Right, now, it's great to see so many people here. This is quite loud. Great to see so many people. As always with the British Constitution Group, we never know how many people will turn up, so to look at the sea of faces in this hall is absolutely brilliant. And I've got some things at the end of my talk to say about where we are and where we need to go and how we're going to get there. But as usual, it falls upon the Royal Navy to clear up the mess of the Army. So I'll just get rid of that presentation.
You couldn't resist that.
No. Okay.
Congratulations to Brian Gerrish. His common purpose that he discovered 7 years ago has now been taken away.
Right, well that's a very kind statement, Margaret, so thank you very much for that. But I'm going to say, of course, the important thing is it hasn't just been me. There's been a lot of people digging over the last few years, and there are some of them that have done a huge amount of work that I can't name because they're doing such good work they'd rather not be named. So I know this sounds a bit strange. If you like to give a round of applause to the unnamed people, that would be brilliant. Okay, I've got an hour. I'm going to try and do it a bit under an hour so that we can pick up a bit of time for Roger to speak at the end. I initially said I was going to talk about the alternative media, but somebody very quickly said to me, that's wrong, you should be talking about the free press and the free media. And I think that's right, so I've just corrected it there on the slide. Here's Hillary Clinton, and I'm not quite sure when this was, March 2011, she was saying that the US was in an international information war. And that is what is going on. We are in the middle of an information war. We're being fed unbelievable propaganda. We've got people literally playing around with our minds. And if we're going to fight, we have to understand what's actually going on. This is the key. You can't fight what you don't know, what you don't understand. So with the greenback pound, the Bradbury pound, we're now learning what these people have been up to. And of course, the moment you can see what they're up to, you're well on the way to dealing with it. So if you're sitting there today thinking, well, we're still hearing all these gloomy stories, how do we deal with it as an individual, as a group of people, as the British Constitution Group? The best advice I can give to you is that actually you're starting to deal with it now, because if you understand what's going on, then your minds, your intellect, your scheming plans can help undo this lot. So the fact you're here is a key part to dealing with it. But we've got to know what these people are doing. Now, you've got to be prepared to change things. At the back, so the rear right-hand door, there is a stall the other side with a guy called Dave Barnby. I don't know how many of you visited his stall. Oh, he's at the back. Hello, Dave. Well, he gave me a piece of paper earlier this morning, and it's talking about two organisations. So this is the first one, the Information Research Department. This was set up in Edward Heath's time, and its job was basically to undermine anybody in the public who was getting concerned about what was going on with the movement towards the European Union. So the government was putting time, money, people, resources into deceiving the British public as to what they were creating. And this was the organisation. That's the link through to some of the documents, but if you see Dave, I don't know whether you've got any left, but this is the document that I am referring to at the moment. So here is absolute proof that the government was prepared to mess around with what we could see and believe. And we can then jump forward to 2008, when The Guardian actually exposed that there was a new unit set up, the Research, Information and Communication Unit, and that was going to manage Al-Qaeda propaganda. So we have Al-Qaeda based in a cave somewhere in the desert, and they are manipulating all of the world media and the British media in order to sell their message, I don't think. So what this was really about was getting an organisation that was going to play around with how we saw wars and terrorist acts and violence. And this, the sophistication of this stuff, puts the communist countries to absolute shame. This is very, very sophisticated stuff, messing around with people's belief systems and minds. Who's paying for it? We are. So if we stop paying for it, it's going to stop. So very quickly, what sort of rubbish are they feeding to us? Well, here's Gordon Brown attempting to look sad on Remembrance Day. And so he did it, Cameron did it. They went into this particular location to have photographs taken so they could be presented in the mainstream press as being very sad and concerned about all the deaths. I don't believe they are the slightest bit concerned about any deaths in any of the wars, because they're part of the machinery to create it. Now, this has just come up this morning. I don't know how many of you have heard about this. Okay. It's coming, is it? Okay.
Where's it been?
How did you know it was coming? Okay, all right. Right, so this has hit the news this morning that a UKIP couple who were fostering children have had the children taken away for their outrageous political beliefs. And what was interesting, I am told, is that one of the lead social workers from Rochdale was interviewed on TV, and when she was asked if this was local authority policy, she said no. So this tells me that the local child services people are acting outside their authority. Does anybody know where that is? Pardon? Rotherham, I beg your pardon, sorry. I come from Plymouth, so everywhere north of Bristol sounds the same. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'll watch the faces carefully if I get too close to the limit. But basically, here we are now seeing the state dictate what we can believe. If you don't believe what we think you should believe, we're going to take your children away. Unbelievably dangerous. But we need to expose it, which is what we're doing. Here he is. He's a liar. So he's apparently gone to Europe to agree the budget. They haven't agreed the budget, but the papers are talking as if this man is doing something sensible. So here we got The Guardian trying to make out that this man has got some intelligence. It's a lie. So we can go to other places, and I find this quite amusing. You know, I've got a military background from the Cold War, and yet if we now go to Russia today, we're starting to pick up information we're not seeing coming through the mainstream British press. And of course, what's going on in Europe, we're not being told about. The BBC is not telling us anywhere of the detail. Border agency, well, this is a complete joke, of course, because what they've done with the borders is open the borders, invited people in. We're not going to be squeamish on this subject because the aim is to foment trouble in the country. It's not the fault of the people coming in because they've been invited, but the aim is to pressure everything, pressure resources, pressure people, force the diversity issue. We're not celebrating diversity because what the state is doing is trying to foment violence. So we're all in this together. Anybody who's on the island at the moment, it's not an us and them at local level, it's we are being attacked by our own government. And if we stick together, we're going to win, and if they divide us, we're going to lose. So this propaganda... This propaganda is very dangerous. Israel, of course, in Iran, the overseas wars being stoked up at the moment. William Hague disappearing over to Israel to talk about what's going on. We've had senior British Army officers disappearing for talks. They want the violence, because if they can keep another war going overseas, it takes people's minds off what's happening at home. Don't forget Cameron showing people around one of his residences, went past a map of the world, pointed out Libya, said, "We've done Libya, where shall I invade next?" That was reported in the mainstream press by several MPs. The man is dangerous. He, to me, is a psychopath. Right? Russia is warning about the fact that stuff is being done around the Russian borders. So Russia sees that at the moment Britain, America, NATO are beginning to hem in the Russians. And if you listen to what Putin says, you've got to treat him with some caution, because of course he's totally KGB trained. But if you listen to what Putin is saying, a lot of it is very accurate about a conspiracy amongst the wealthy Western nations. So if we're going to break through the propaganda, I think we've got to look at a variety of sources of news. Here's another lie that Scotland's going to get independence. Well, of course, that's rubbish, because all Scotland is going to become is a region within the European Union. But Alex Salmond continues to lie to the Scottish people, and it's our job to point out that it is a lie. Well, another source of information, I'm just putting it up there. They were talking about the police commissioners. What a farce that's been. Now, were people withdrawing consent by not voting, or were we actually allowing the bad guys in? It remains to be seen. But certainly the turnout, and some polling stations had nobody visiting, that was a major shock to the system. What would happen if that happened at the next election? Or all of the votes got spoiled. Or we had enough independent candidates. One question.
I went to spoil my paper, and when they said, do you know how to vote? I said, I've just got to spoil my paper. They said, oh, would you like a complaint form? We've handed loads of these out.
Well, there you go. There you go. It can be done. The fact is that most people who could make a change to what's going on in the country actually stay at home because they're so fed up. We need to get them out on the streets. I don't mean that. We need to get them out and be active. So here's the man, and I just had to put him up because he's got dirty hands, this man. And he is common purpose. Now, part of the thread of my conversation, of my talk this afternoon, is about the so-called exposure of common purpose, because I don't think it's as straightforward as we might think. This man is common purpose. He works with common purpose. He promotes common purpose overseas in India. And yet, David Cameron's connections with common purpose were not mentioned in any of the mainstream press articles. Neither was the connection with Francis Maud. So it's not straightforward. But what's the dirt on his hands? Wars. He's very keen about this. You're not going to see David Cameron or any of his family close to the battlefront, because as usual, he's a coward and a liar and a deceiver. And there's the deceit. And treason, of course, is really what he's doing, because whatever he says publicly, Cameron and the Tory party and Labour and the Liberal Democrats, with what Roger accurately calls his agenda politics, never mind the colour, the agenda stays the same. Their job is to destroy this country. And if they can pull it low enough, they can generate enough chaos, and that includes violence on the streets, then they can do what they like with the country. So we want to fight back. You've got to be cool, calm, calculated. And we've got to start looking after our neighbours. So when somebody's going to be pulled away by the police or pulled away to be incarcerated in a psychiatric unit, we need hundreds or thousands of people there, peacefully. So here we've got part of the Leveson inquiry, and this was an article by the Telegraph where it was pointing out that in the beginning Cameron said, he'd exchanged a few emails about horses with Rebecca Brooks. And then basically it started to emerge that there was a lot more than that. So if we have a look at the total, there were 59 different communications that basically started to come to light. And I've just highlighted there, Cameron flies by private jet to join Rupert Murdoch and family on his daughter Elizabeth's yacht in Satonini, I think it is. I can't read it from here. Yep, as you do. So this man intimately connected with News Corporation, basically, and he's not declaring to Leveson his communications, but of course Leveson's a chum, so does it matter anyway? Now this is very, very interesting. Secret courts plan in chaos. That's what the Mail said. I think this is an utter lie, because Ken Clarke has been working in the background to bring in secret courts, more courts where there is just a judge, there's no jury. So these are illegal, unlawful courts. They're in total breach of common law, and Clarke is working in the background to bring them in. Here's a picture of him. And of course, at the moment, he doesn't have a role. He's a minister without portfolio. So what they've done is made this rather fat, tubby individual, freelance, just like they did with Mandelson. So he doesn't have any official remit. And what was very interesting when we arrived at the hotel yesterday, we had a look at the paper. Is it called I? It's got a red sun symbol on it. Anyway, this was one page. I know it's difficult to see, but all I wanted to do is here's one page of that paper, and what I've ringed is the article talking about Ken Clarke and the secret courts. So you see the relative focus that this paper's giving on secret courts. It's about a wine bottle size. Yeah? It's put in front of you, but so you don't take any notice of it. And what that little article says is Ken Clarke's actually quite happy that the Lords have rejected the bill, because they're going to go back to Parliament and get the best bits through anyway. So Ken Clarke, in my opinion, one of the most dangerous politicians in this country, and he's on the heels, close behind Mandelson. Now this is where it gets interesting at the moment, isn't it? We had supposedly an exposure of Jimmy Savile, hundreds of victims. We had Jimmy Savile being able to get into secure mental hospitals, into Stoke Mandeville Hospital, into other institutions over in Jersey, and all of a sudden Savile has disappeared from the mainstream papers. All we're hearing is about McAlpine. And we've now got the bizarre situation that he's being paid money for supposedly a false allegation when people haven't actually accused of anything publicly. My brain says there's a scam here somewhere.
It's to take the attention away from the children that have been sexually abused.
It's to take the attention away from the children that have been sexually abused, because the people who've been abusing them are well up at the top of the establishment. The political establishment, the police, the Lords. And we're not going to go too far into that subject, but we've seen something incredible with social workers here. We're not against social workers. We have some very good ones talking to us at the moment. But what we are beginning to uncover is that the systems which are supposedly there to protect children are being used to procure children for trafficking, prostitution, and worse. And the people running it are the politicians and the senior police officers. And I think there's going to be a lot more information coming out about this. Now, how much would you trust the BBC? Does anybody trust the BBC? Well, the BBC's just been through a scandal where they've had Jimmy Savile in their midst doing what he's been doing, and nobody wanted to take him on. Yeah, we knew he was a bad man, but we didn't do anything about it, right? So you would have thought that the BBC would then get quite serious about child abuse. Now, the UK column for over a year has been exposing absolutely horrific abuse of young teenagers at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. We have printed parts of witness statements. We've accused officials. We're accusing them all at the moment of a cover-up. We've printed sections of letters where young people were talking about child pornography being shown to them and circulated at the college. We've printed pictures of the abusers. And what has happened? Nothing. A wall of silence. No legal action. Why? Because they can't go there. Because everything we're saying is true. But what we've got is a cover-up which is being run through the child protection system. So if you take Oxfordshire Child Safeguarding Board, on it are all the organisations who are involved in the cover-up. Oxfordshire Council is there, social services are there, the police are there, the educational authorities are there. Now what this is the common purpose system of getting people to work outside their authority. You team them up in these partnerships, and then when something goes wrong, they all herd together to protect themselves. Now, the BBC approached me a few weeks ago, and they said they'd been reading the column. They asked some sensible questions. They said they were shocked by what we were talking about. They said they wanted to meet. They said they wanted to see evidence, more evidence. And I was asked, could we meet some of the victims? And I said yes to all those things, but I said, shall we meet and look at some evidence first and some statements, because the victims are very nervous people and we need to build some trust. Does that sound reasonable? Now, I had some family things to do for a week, 10 days, and eventually I made a phone call to this lady to say, can we get together? Have I got a sound lead plugged in here? Yeah. Okay, so hopefully this is going to work. So I called her, and what I thought was going to happen is we were going to meet at a location, and I was going to show her serious documentation supporting the abuse of young people. This is what she said to me. I hope.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Is that Nicholas Stanbridge?
It is.
Yeah, hi. It's Brian Gerrish from the UK column.
Oh, hi there, Brian.
We spoke, a week and a bit ago.
Yes.
I was basically taking a bit of time off with the family last week, and I've been back this week, which has now flown by. But I thought I would give you a call to say, are you still interested in a meet-up and look at some material?
At the moment, the answer is no, because I've been landed with a number of projects to get done now before Christmas. So should we put it on hold for the time being? And if I come back to it, I'll give you a call.
Well, you can do, but at the end of the day, Nicola, we're dealing with the abuse of children, which, as we're seeing in the mainstream press, we've got extraordinary things happening.
I know.
And this is not something that, you know, I do not know what is the matter with our mainstream press at the moment, but, you know, what is more important than the safety of young children and young people?
Well, if it's any, I mean, it's no, you know, obviously it's not to be complacent about, but I mean, I'm putting together a piece about anorexia among children at the moment. So, I mean, you know, I'm not exactly off looking into some serious subjects amid other lighter-hearted subjects. So, I mean, they're all there and they're all bubbling away, but...
Well, okay, you know, I'm going to say that you came to me, it's a serious subject. We've been battling now for months to break this thing, but obviously it's not very high on your priorities. That's what you're telling me.
Well, it might not be my priorities we're talking about, but I mean, I just have to crack on with this list of projects that I've got to...
Well, you take on your editor, but I really despair at what is going on in this country. We have got these horrific stories coming out about what's been going on in the children. We've got idiots like Little John today trying to make out the whole thing is conspiracy theory. If you knew what, which I'm sure you don't, what they really do to these children, I think you'd want to do something about it. But okay, Radio 4 editors are not interested. That's what you're telling me.
Not at the moment, because, we've explored with the council and the police. We've made calls, and, at the moment...
So what you're telling me is that you've spoken to all the people guilty of the cover-up, and they're telling you that there's nothing in this story, so you've dropped it.
Well, we haven't dropped it. We never started it.
Well, give me an idea of what the council have said.
Well, if it's all right, I'd rather not, Brian.
Well, I'll tell you what they said. They said there's nothing in the story. So you have not sat down with me to look, because I was going to sit you down to let you look at statements written by some of these young people. And I guarantee you would be stunned and horrified. And all you've done is spoken to the very people who are refusing to properly investigate and deal with this abuse.
Right. We've spoken to a number of people around the case.
Have you spoken to any of the victims?
Well, we've spoken to you, and if you...
I'm not a victim. Have you spoken to any of the victims?
By all means, if you think that they should get in contact with us, please...
No, I'm not playing that game, because you are telling me you are not taking the matter seriously. You've spoken to the very people who are covering up what has been done to these children.
Well, we're not prepared to go through you in terms of talking to these children.
What do you mean by that? I have offered to let you read statements.
But we would like to speak to them independently and on their own.
That is possible.
They are absolutely... You have my details. You can, by all means, pass on my details.
No, I said to you...
Is that where it has to be?
I said to you I was prepared to see whether that could happen.
If they want to raise these allegations with the Today programme on Radio 4, you get them to call me. If there are several witnesses and they corroborate what's going on, then we'll take it forward. But that's all I can offer.
You think that I'm going to get witnesses? Some of these people are very frightened to make a phone call to you when you are telling me that your investigative journalism is so casual, the only people you've spoken to are the very authorities that are covering this up.
Well, we've spoken to other people involved as well.
Have you spoken to any victims?
I'm letting you have my details, and if there are any victims that you want to ask to call, that's fair enough, Brian.
Nicola, please answer the question. Have you spoken to any victims?
Yeah, well, we're not going to go through you to speak to the victims. If they want to speak to us, that's absolutely acceptable.
But how can you not go through me if I am the person in contact with victims and you're not?
You should be controlling victims, Brian, and I think if there are victims, you should let them call me directly, and I will hear what they have to say.
Are you suggesting that I am controlling people who've been abused?
Well, you are if you're not letting them call me independently.
They won't call you because they're not going to call people they don't trust, and what I said to you is trust has to be built up.
You shouldn't suggest to people that there's no reason to trust a journalist out of the blue, because
you told me so far that the only people you're prepared to speak to are the very authorities who are covering up the abuse in the first place.
No, we've spoken to people around the subject.
Have you spoken to any victims?
You have my number. Please pass it on to the victims and say to them that I am unbiased and I will listen to what they have to say.
So
I will not go through you to speak to victims of abuse, Brian. I'm sorry.
You are part of the Today, Radio 4 Today programme, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Nicola. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
So there you have the BBC that has harboured clearly one of the most vile paedophiles and necrophiliacs that we've seen in this country for some time. And they talk to me about trust that people should have in the BBC. And then, do you notice the twist? Who's the problem? I'm the problem. I'm the one at fault because I'm controlling the witnesses.
Brian?
Yeah.
For 2 weeks I've been being pestered by a gentleman that I've been working with who wanted me to contact this woman
Yeah.
at the fore, at BBC 4 and Radio 4 trying to get information, not the main BBC. And what they're trying to do is find out the level of people out there that are saying they've been abused by getting them all to come forward, and then they'll play psychological games on them, like she's attempted with you,
Okay.
to shut them all up and subdue them.
Right.
That's what they're doing. And I'm glad I haven't contacted them for that very reason.
Okay. This lady knows a huge amount about the abuse of children. Thank you. What is going on at the moment is a huge fishing exercise by the establishment to see actually how much people do know about the abuse going on. And my view, it's my personal view, it's just a view, is that the BBC is being used to help close down the full and proper investigation to expose that we have a government which comprises people who are paedophiles. Right? So, Lord Patton, of course, is head of the BBC, and he is a common purpose supporter. So I've written to Lord Patton, and I've asked him if it's true that there's been a close down on editors that they can't investigate child abuse. So we'll wait and see what he has to say.
Right. That sounds very much like common purpose trade to me.
Yeah, but it's great, isn't it? Because you can hear it, and when you can hear it, wow, we know what these people are doing. That young lady is going to have a career in the media. I've sort of had a look at her picture, and I think we should get it on the front page. Right, here he is, crony of David Cameron's, in my opinion. So he's going to investigate, you know, the press and free media. How many of you believe there's a free press and a free media in this country with regard to the big name papers, BBC, ITV? Do you believe it's free? Do you believe it's honest? Okay, well, you told me that. Just remember what you've just told me. So here he is. This is in his little boy blue suit. He's pretty, isn't he? Yeah? And we've learnt in the paper over the last couple of days, and it is true because we've checked it, that when he's delivered his report on Thursday, he's going to run away to Australia to give a talk in a Sydney university. So, all right, I'll have to do that. You can come again. Right, so here it is, an unmissable one-day symposium with special guest presenter Lord Justice Brian Leveson. So he is not going to take questions on his report in UK. He's going to run away on a jet to Australia. Why do you think he's doing that? Because it's a complete crock of rubbish. Yeah? This is an exercise to get in place state control of the media. Now let's have a look at the exposure of common purpose. A lot of the papers reported, the Mail did 11 pages, the Telegraph reported, the Sunday Times reported, and the Sun also. This was the Sun. I love the headline, "The Lefty Plotters with One Common Purpose to Gag the Press." And they did a nice little diagram linking all the people together, and they really talked about common purpose. This was incredible for me because, you know, you think initially it's all your Christmases come at once. This is, I think, part of the... this is their comment. I'll just read it if you can't read it at the back. "We examine the spider's web of connections between those figures trying to gag the press. Their names may mean little, but they wield immense power. Linked by their left-wing politics, personal friendships, or cushy posts in the state sector, this incestuous cabal has long wanted to ban stories uncomfortable to the liberal elite. Many members have links to an organisation called Common Purpose, whose common purpose includes greater press regulation." Sounds great, but notice the spin. It's lefty. So where was the mention of Francis Maud and David Cameron and Chris Patten? All pushed to one side, because this was just being used as leverage against what started to happen with the press. This is a game being played. And I believe we're going to see Common Purpose collapsed. And I think they're going to do it because they're desperate to stop people looking in the right direction. If Common Purpose is collapsed as an organisation, it's discredited, they think everybody's going to go away. And I'm going to say to you, the important thing to remember is Common Purpose was the spearhead of an army to get the right Common Purpose people into the right jobs. Now, that Common Purpose agenda is already spreading in other organisations. And I think they are going to collapse Common Purpose to try and fool us that it's all gone when it hasn't. And one of the things that we've been told about is that Common Purpose accounts are in a bad way, so they're borrowing money from their own trustees. And I believe that at the moment, the National Westminster Bank is one step away from putting a receiver in place. Now, the interesting thing is, you can't run a charity unless it's absolutely financially perfect. If there's any doubt, it's above board, the charity has to be closed. But not Common Purpose, because Common Purpose trains people in the Charity Commission. That's how it works. That was a close-up of their little diagram, and they were pointing out the links particularly with the Media Standards Trust and Hacked Off. How many of you saw any of these reports? Right, it's very interesting because that's a spread of papers. What we will do is make sure we get a special programme out where you can read what the papers said. A lot of very accurate information. So that was from The Sun. This was from the Sunday Times. A little bit clearer. But the key point was Sir David Bell, who's chairperson of Leveson's panel, he had started with Julia Middleton the Media Standards Trust, that's over on the left-hand side, and they had started the Hacked Off campaign, which was campaigning for an investigation into the media. So Sir David Bell started the campaign, and then he gets appointed to Leveson's panel. Nice, isn't it? And then what they show is that a lot of the people called to give evidence at the panel were also Common Purpose people. So what we watched with Leveson was a game being played where the ultimate result is Leveson's report, and we're pretty sure he's going to be recommending state control of the press. Now this is very, very interesting. We got a heads up on a guy called Julian Petley, and he was blogging about what the Mail had written. And we thought he was a bit of a cheeky what's-it, because that's a front page from the UK column. Common Purpose exposed, and what you're looking at is the Leveson inquiry team. So this is plagiarism. So he's broken the first rule of journalism, but this man was heavily criticising the Mail's report on Common Purpose. Now, if I read this very quickly, with an eye on the clock, the Mail's so-called investigation is drenched in the language of conspiracy. Common Purpose is compared to a giant octopus and a matrix. Significantly, one of Icke's novels is entitled Children of the Matrix. The Bell Middleton network has apparently subjected the Leveson inquiry, which is of course the Mail's real target, to a process of infiltration. And the paper pulls together a truly amazing cast of characters in order to try to persuade its readers of the incestuous relationships that intertwine throughout the inquiry. And that what we have here is an example of the process of entryism, by which this apparently thoroughly sinister grouping has allegedly taken over much of the British establishment. Now, if you read the 11 pages in the Mail, it is absolutely accurate. It should be, because most of it has come from the UK column. Okay? And they join even more dots, warning about the influence of Common Purpose. So here is Professor Petley commenting on it. And this is part of this gentleman's campaign group. So he's a professor who was used to give evidence at Leveson. He also runs a campaign group, and he attacks the Mail story, calling it conspiracy theory. Now, I spoke to him on the phone, and I asked him on the phone, and I have meticulous notes of that phone call, and I said, have you got any factual information in front of you, or did you have when you wrote that article? Because I know what the Mail and the Sunday Times and the Telegraph and the Sun said is true. And he said, well, I referred to 2 Guardian articles. And I said, well, the Guardian has been supporting the Media Standards Trust, so it's compromised. Did you have any factual information in front of you? He said, no. So a man called by the Leveson inquiry to give evidence on probity and good practice in the press penned an article criticising the paper when he was not aware of the facts. It's good, isn't it? Shall we look at him a bit more? Here he is. We found him on a website. We're delighted to announce Julian Petley as our second to be confirmed keynote speaker. He will be giving the talk, The Many Mythologies of Snuff. Do you know what sort of snuff he's talking about? Snuff movies. We have a man called to give evidence at the Leveson inquiry, and in the background, actually, yesterday and today, he's part of the lead speakers at an event at Bournemouth University talking about snuff movies. And one of the things they're saying is there's an urban myth. There aren't real snuff movies. We, the commercial media, make horror films called snuff movies, but there are no real snuff movies. I suggest this man is very, very dangerous. And that's what I had to say in a telephone conversation with Professor Petley. He admitted to the UK column that in penning his Inform article attacking the Daily Mail, exposing Leveson's common purpose cabal, he did not have any factual information or evidence on the subject in front of him. I framed that gentleman as well, and I see him on a page. And here he is, giving evidence through to David Bell's hacked off inquiry. So we've got David Bell, who's a chairman of Common Purpose. We've identified paedophiles in the Common Purpose network. And now we're going through and we're following these dirty, grubby people. Here's the advert for what Bournemouth University is doing. And if you can't see the image at the top right, it's a naked woman on a playing card. She's been cut up with scissors. That's what the public are paying for, because we are paying for the education at Bournemouth University, and that's one of our lead media schools. If we're going to fight these people, we've got to understand that they are controlling the media completely, and that's why the free press and the free media, we've got to support it. We've been waiting for this man to come out the box. Ian Hislop, Private Eye. Now, Private Eye, over the last 5 years, has written some superb articles exposing fraud and corruption. But we got interested because they never talk about solutions. They never talk about what the cause is. They never link it to the fact that senior government ministers are allowing this to happen. We sent Mr. Hislop some information about Common Purpose about 6-9 months ago. We exchanged emails. So he has had real detailed information about Common Purpose. Sorry, what's the programme called last night? Have I got news for you? Pardon?
There's a report by the programme last night.
Okay. Right, yeah, this is the actual snapshot of him as he's mentioning Common Purpose on that programme. He dismisses it all as conspiracy theory. I think Private Eye is another government-backed organ, effectively, to cover up, to keep us laughing at stuff which is actually unbelievably serious. So I think he wins the title of shill, and maybe we ought to do some more exposing. Right. We're here to talk about fighting back, all right? The exposure is 90% of the battle. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, how do we fight all this? It's exposure. You've got to show it, you've got to talk about it, you've got to put posters up, you've got to blast the internet, you've got to get it to everybody in this country. And that's quite an easy thing to do today, because if you can't get out the house to post stuff, you can do it over the internet. But if you're sitting there saying, how do we bring these people down? The first thing that's got to happen is to be exposed. And the second thing is we have to put up an alternative regime of governance, which is what Roger's talking about and where we're getting to with the bank. Okay? Fighting this monster is not difficult. The first thing is you've got to expose what it's doing. You've got to understand how the propaganda works. So I thought we'd be positive and we'd have a look at some of the other organisations that are doing the right thing. So I'm putting up some slides of some of the media that's on the internet at the moment where people are speaking out. Now, where is the lady? Louise, would you like to stand up, please? Because she wouldn't do that for me the other night. Come in. This is Louise. Louise got in contact with the UK column about a year ago, saying, would we do an interview? And what was interesting is Louise has an hour slot on a genuine FM radio station in the south of Devon. And she's in a very interesting area because there are lots and lots of retired, particularly naval officers. And she said, do you want to speak on the programme? So I did speak on the programme, and I said a few things. And I think I'm allowed to say from that time, the viewers have gone up and up and up, or the listeners on that radio programme, to the extent they've had problems with the servers coping. Now, Louise has had a number of people, not just me, but people who will talk about real subjects sensibly, but not holding back. And since she's been doing that, the listeners have skyrocketed. Is that the right word? Yeah. So here is one lady that got involved, managed to get an hour slot on a radio show, and now the listeners are pouring in because they want the truth instead of listening to disgraceful rubbish like Radio 4. Okay? So, well done to Louise. I can't say this is for Mike Robinson because Mike Robinson's from north of the border and this is the organisation south of the border. But TNS Radio in Ireland gave the UK column a certain amount of computer software, which meant that we could link our programmes up with them on the internet. So when we're broadcasting, it's also going out in Southern Ireland. And there are other people now starting to link in together. So we say thank you very much to all of you for your support and donations and those things, because that's given us the equipment to do the broadcasts we're doing. And now we're picking up more people on the internet, including in America, for example, who are retransmitting. So what we've got to do, and that is we've got to make sure we own the free media. Let's sideline the BBC, because they're a very nasty organisation. Ian Crane, how many of you have watched some of Ian Crane's material? Brilliant, okay. Ian's got his own style, he doesn't hang back, he goes into all sorts of subjects, but now it's brilliant because we talk to him quite a bit, we're sharing information, we're doing presentations together, the teamwork's building, and this is what we need. This is a very brave guy who should be in the audience somewhere. Mick, are you around? There he is. He's got his hand up at the back. Just stand up a bit. It was a bit too quick there. This is Mick Harvey, ex-Royal Marine, sent to prison for attempting to give his children Easter eggs. Okay? Harassment for giving sons Easter eggs and leaving a birthday card on a doorstep. No court orders in place. Okay? Because there was uproar in the court when he was sentenced to 7 weeks, the judge increased it to 8 weeks. All right? Now, this is the state beginning to put the knife in on the armed forces. right? The armed forces, they want them dead and maimed on the battlefront, and when they come back, they want them dead and maimed here, or put out of action. Now, what Mick has done is not hung back, but he's fighting in the courts, and I know he knows a lot of the stuff that's been discussed this afternoon about how the courts operate and what to do. But he also got on the internet. This is his personal Facebook page with 30,682 supporters. This is how we can take over this system, okay? Never mind the government officials that are spying on Facebook. We are capable of absolutely taking over the whole system. I haven't got 30,000 people on my Facebook page, mainly because I don't really understand how to work it. But how many people in the room? We think it's about 300 plus. What would happen if we each were talking to 30,000 people? You can do it, yeah? And if we do it, the lid's going to come off what's going on. Here's Alex Jones, right? Now, Alex Jones, how many people listen to him? Alex has got his own personal style, very in your face, very brash, very American, but he's there doing it. And I will say from this platform, I have absolutely no doubt he's genuine and he's doing a great job. And now there's link up between UK Column and him and other people who are all trying to get the word out. David Icke, if I had a choice, believing Cameron or David Icke, not difficult, is it? And this is the man who was warning about paedophiles in high places, including Savile, years ago. So he's not getting the recognition he should. From mainstream, he won't. We need to give him recognition. This is a very small blog radio, also based in Ireland. This gentleman and his wife had their 2 boys taken away. He's very, very clever. He knows all about the psychopaths and the psychopathic condition which is now causing the problem. Because in government, in political parties, they're recruiting psychopaths or people who are defective personalities. That's why you can see somebody absolutely lie, but it doesn't affect them. They can't even understand why you're upset. So if you want good information, have a look at that site, Free Thinking Voice, and he's got an interview by an American social worker with an American social worker called John. It's phenomenal.
Brian,
yeah.
Can you just quickly explain the word psychopathic? Because I think sometimes people, when they hear such words, they have visions of a madman running around, but in reality, there's a completely different personality.
Right, that's why I've pointed you to that site, because on that site, he is now getting psychiatrists and clinical psychologists coming on to say, of course, it's not just a madman running around with an axe. There are different personality types, and we've got to be accurate in what we're talking about. We're not talking about people who are ill and have got problems. We're talking about something different. And I'm pointing you at that site, where are you? Because he is talking about it accurately. Okay? So I recommend that site. Here's Patrick Henningsen, 21st Century Wire. Patrick working with UK Column on overseas things. He's pushing out brilliant information, including about Savile and the McBurger affair, McMountain. I've forgotten the name. It'll come to me in a minute. Okay, UK Column Live. So with encouragement from TNS, we started pushing out this live show. It has been phenomenal, the reaction we're getting. Mike's sitting there at the front very quietly. If he didn't do all the stuff to make this happen, it wouldn't go out. We're going to increase the number of programs we're putting out. We're doing the news every day from 12 to 12:30, and Thursdays is a 2-hour show from 2 till 4. We're getting a phenomenal response. So, how many of you watched it? Well, blimey. Okay, brilliant. Okay, sorry?
I watch it while I'm doing ironing. I pop it in front telly.
Okay. No, I was going to say something about that, but I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Before you finish, can you give Kevin a mention?
Yeah, okay, I will do. I know Roger is twitching at the moment. One of the shows there in the studio, we've been, the one person who did attack us over what we were doing maintains that we're in $1 million studio in Plymouth. Who's been in the $1 million studio? Okay, it's not quite $1 million, is it? But we're doing it, and we're going to have a new studio look at some stage fairly soon, so that we can do some other things. But we know this is now being watched by the mainstream media.
You know, Brian, we're rebroadcasting UK Column on White Radio as well.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're open to take local stories. We're very interested in this. So if we mimicked the mainstream news where you do the main bit and then you did local news, if any of you have got, you know, well-researched stories, you've got a little video clip, or we'll do a Skype interview with you, we're interested in doing it. We're not saying we are the only people. What we're saying is give it a go. Start your own web, blog, radio and see what happens, because we've got to get this spread. And
how many subscribers do you have?
I think the best way I could say is that we've had to recently upgrade. Mike, do you want to say something techno-babble here?
I see the views on YouTube, it's always about 300, 400.
No, that's if we do an ordinary half-hour news show, we're now, I'm going to say, at about 480 people listening live. But part of that was that we had problems with the bandwidth available to us. The 2-hour show on a Thursday, we're up to over 2,000 people live. Do you reckon? Yeah. But the key thing is within 24 hours, because obviously people like to watch it at other times of day, we're into the thousands, and we know that YouTube is not printing, you know, the proper numbers of hits. So I'm going to say it's high thousands, but it's being taken in the States and pushed across as well. Yeah. So, you know, there's 300 of you or so here. And we're now saying we're sitting in our own studio for half an hour and we're getting the same audience on a daily basis. So we're going to expand it. Here's some of the front pages, and we're saying the column's still reporting stuff other people won't. And a bit of blatant advertising. The 9th of December up in London, Ian Crane's put on an event which I'm speaking, Patrick Henningsen, Ken O'Keefe, Ben Fellows and Ian Crane. So we're really going to try and hammer Leveson. And I'll just bring you back. What we're doing is rebelling. So we are saying we can see what you're doing and we're waking people up. And we've got to keep pushing at that. I believe there are mainstream press and reporters who are paying attention to what we're talking about. The bosses are controlled, but reporters are beginning to wake up. So you want to know what to do, talk, push it out, email. If you don't like our material, push out the material from other sites. Stay in your specialist areas. If the courts are not for you, don't get mixed up in them. Leave the courts to people who know what they're doing. Yeah? If your thing is food, do food. If your thing is the media, stick in media. Imagine it as an army out there. And the army isn't just the people on the front, is it? It goes way back to the people who were making the bullets. And you might be the person that's putting the fuse in the end of the shell. That's a really important job, because if the shell doesn't work at the front, you could lose the battle. So as long as each of us are doing something, some little job, and we have enough people doing it, we're going to be hitting these people. Our prediction is we're going to see some amazing stuff in 2013. And I would like to say the money is important, because that's driving everything. So I fully support the drive to look at the money system. I say, if you want to get the lid off this thing, do not let Savile go, because the media wants this thing hushed up, and I believe they've already got senior police officers trying to diffuse the investigation into these... Pardon?
Don't let McAlpine go. He's the key. All the newspapers have just said this terrible thing where he's been falsely accused. He was not falsely accused. There are a whole lot of paedophiles all over the country, for as long as I had anything to do with psychology, who were talking about McAlpine. And when the when the ship comes home to land on McAlpine, that will blow it all to pieces. Especially after they've all said he's fucking Leveson.
Well,
He's as guilty as hell.
allegedly, he never challenged Scallywag magazine. And if you don't know what Scallywag magazine, perhaps you should look it up. One question.
Brian, the man that's investigating this Julie Savile business is the boss of BBC Scotland, you know, and they're all tied in with the paedophiles in the Labour Party.
Well, of course, BBC Scotland also pulled out of the investigation into Holly Gregg abuse.
Well, that's the reason why they brought him in, to shut up Gordon Brown being a paedophile.
Right. And now we're doing the job because the truth is coming to the surface. So,
Worried about it. The BBC's worried about it.
yeah. All we've got to do is keep pushing the truth around so that they can't bury it. So we need to be talking about the cover-up, and any police officer you know as a friend, talk to them about it, because we know the police are very upset. Roger, I'm going to finish there. Thanks very much.